Hello, and thank you for joining us for day 8 of Architizers Future Fest. To those of you who have attended one of our previous talks, welcome back. And if this is your first event, thank you for joining us. Future Fest comprises an epic series of 15 live talks with A+ award winners from all over the world, forming a vibrant celebration of architectural innovation. It's also our way of warming up for the 11th annual A+ Awards, which is opening for entries on October 17th this year. You can stay tuned for more details on that a little later. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Paul Keskies. I'm the editor-in-chief at Architizer, and today I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to chat with Fokke Moerel of MVRDV, who will share her vision for Places for All. While we wait for the room to fill up, I want to encourage you all to say hi in the chat box on the right side of your screen and let us know where you're from. It's always amazing to see such a global audience. Now, a few quick pointers about our live platform. So if you're having any technical difficulties with the stream, you can click on the help icon on the bottom left corner of your screen, and you'll see a few options for improving your picture, the sound, and so on. It's worth noting that there will be a recorded version of the talk as well, so you can catch up on anything you missed or share this with your colleagues after the event. Thirdly, questions. You can type anything you like in the chat, but if you have a specific question you'd like to ask, we recommend you use the questions tab. Just click on the questions icon on the bottom right of your screen and then type your question there. If you see a question from someone else you'd be interested in hearing, you can upvote it, and we'll aim to ask Fokke the most popular questions a little later on. And finally, feel free to use the react button whenever you see something you like. Incidentally, if you want to register for some of our future talks coming up in the next week and a half, you can go to architizer.com and click on the very top article. I think also Lucia is going to share that link in the chat. In this article, we have links for every single talk, so you can scroll down to learn more, and you can sign up for each one that interests you. Now I'm thrilled to introduce Fokke Moerel. Partner and architect at MVRDV, Fokke directs the firm's Studio Public, a unit within the office that focuses primarily on projects that have a dedicated urban impact. These include public and cultural buildings, as well as transformations of monumental buildings that endeavor to revive their immediate urban context. Coming from a family of designers, Moerel's professional presence extends beyond practice to include teaching or serving as a guest critic for academies and universities worldwide. Moerel herself has a master's degree in architecture from the Academy of Architecture Rotterdam and a BA in interior design from the Willem de Kooning Academy. She has taught at Harvard and Cambridge alongside MVRDV founding partner Nathalie de Vries at the Silpakorn University in Bangkok, Thailand, and is currently tutoring at the Hague Royal Academy of Arts. Moerel is also an external critic at the Academy of Architecture Rotterdam. That's an incredible list. I don't know how you fit it all in, Fokke. I'm going to pass the mic on to you now, and I look forward to hearing what you've got in store for us.
All right. Thank you, Paul. That was nice. Anyway, thank you very much for the invitation, of course, and thanks to all the voters for the popular choice of this award. It's of course amazing. When so many people actually like it, because that's what we try to do. It's not just places for all, but it's really places for all, for everybody, for people. So, and of course, I will talk a bit about the Depot, because that's the project that has won the award. But also to speak a little bit broader about how we as architects, let's say, can help to improve our living environment. And I'm amazed by looking at the chat how many people from all over the world. I was going to say, I don't know, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know, like everybody's there. So that's quite amazing to see. So I hope indeed there's going to be some questions there at the end. I'm going to sort of guide you or I'm going to give a wide slider of projects. And they all have to do with this indeed this title of Places for All, how we can improve the environment that we all live in. So there's like 3 topics here that are strongly connected to our DNA of the office. So how can we create comfortable cities for people? How can we really make use of all the resources and the space that we have in a smart way for a future-proof environment? And but also, how can art or architecture actually really be a tool for inclusiveness? So places for all. But first of all, let's start with a really short introduction. You can find all of this on the websites, of course, but it also shows a bit of how, I don't know, we also work all over the place. And that's this is our slogan. We create social, innovative, realistic, green, remarkable, hopefully, architecture and interior design and strategies and urban planning, etc. But especially for a changing world. I think that is the most important thing here, that we try to keep up and also be ahead of this changing world. And we see a lot of things, of course, happening around us every day. So these are our founders. In the wrong order, to understand the name of our office, MVRDV, but it's Jacob van Rijs, Nathalie de Vries and Winnie Maas. But of course they're not alone. So this is our leadership, very proudly in front of, indeed, the depot. Just before it was delivered, as you can see, some pieces missing in the facade. But I'm proudly one of those partners to steer with all of everybody, the full office. And of course, they're not alone. We're not alone. There's many people, and actually many, many more people. So at this moment, we're like a little bit above 300 people all in all. And this is one of the excursions just before summer to one of our projects that I will show a little bit later. And they come from many different countries, because we work in many different countries all over the world, of course with a focus in Europe, but also in China and more in the Americas. That's also why we have more presence in different countries. So of course in Rotterdam, that's our headquarters, let's say. So this is the place, Rotterdam is the place where most of the projects come about. But our oldest satellite is in Shanghai, and then we moved into Paris, and then just a couple of years ago into Berlin, and now indeed into New York, actually, almost as we speak. So it's not even in the slide, because we don't have an office yet, but we do have a presence from the start of September. So we're very proud of that. That's indeed our new colleague who leads, Vanessa Kesebin, who leads the New York office from, well, as I say, 1st of September. But of course, we have been working in the States for quite some time. And actually today, as we speak, the radio tower really up in the tip of Manhattan in New York is being opened in between all these different communities. And that's also how you see it reflected in the facade. But also in San Francisco, we have a project under construction there, Mission Rock, to be opened either the end of this year or the first quarter of next year. Mixed use building, and there's many more. I just wanted to share a couple of you. So indeed, also today I'm at home. That's what we're getting used to. This was my office for quite some time, as long as the weather allowed for it, in my little greenhouse. And what we figured out, I think, indeed, to do also these kind of moments. I mean, it's not the nicest to be talking to your screen, but on the other hand, indeed, if you see in the chat how many people are there and from all over the world, that of course is amazing. We should really keep on, using that and seeing it as a benefit. At the same time, we're very glad to move into our office again. This is our headquarters, as I said, in Rotterdam, and there's a couple of things that we really want to hang on to. So the lunch, for instance, we have to do this in shifts now, but still, it's very valuable for us to keep seeing each other and speaking to each other, and not just, even if it's about the weather. Hot topic, of course, nowadays especially. One of our teams here at work, and or the think tank, as you can call it, where the quiet production work, let's say, and heavy thinking is being done, and at the same time we have a lot of different meeting rooms, gathering rooms, as you can see here, and not just colors, but really to see how, how to find the right spot for the right conversation. And I think that also resembles in how we work, because we don't specify, we don't do things again and again. We have a wide variety of different projects in different countries and different skills, and with different types of clients. So not to specify is or specialize is not always handy or efficient, but it's a lot of fun. You need to reinvent your wheel actually every time. It's a must. And even from the beginning, indeed, this is Berlin Voigt. It was the first collaboration between the founding partners for the European competition, which they won at that time, almost 30 years ago, I think now. And but these kind of research projects to see how you can live in a very dense yet individual world. How can you do this in a comfortable way? These kind of topics have been there from the start and remain till this day, and through different types of publications or even installations, we keep on researching these kind of topics. And connected to that is indeed, as I said, how can we create comfortable, green and livable cities for people, of course. So there's a couple of projects that I would like to show you, and they might go back and forth from different types, but that's, I think, what I was seeking for. Anyway, that's also how we work, as I said. Market Hall in Rotterdam is actually the biggest project we did, and quite recently in Rotterdam. So we have been quartered there for a long time, but only more recently started to work there. This is more or less an extension of the street, if you will, because if you see what it looked like from the start, it was an empty space, like really in the middle, like a landing lane in the middle of this of the center of Rotterdam, only used once or twice a week for a market. And on the right hand side, you see how many people actually wanted to get into this building, since it is indeed publicly accessible. It's an open street where food is celebrated, which was quite uncommon before in Rotterdam. People didn't really have that much interest in leisure and food. It was really a working place, and but we're celebrating life much more, which is good, and we're also trying to add, as you see here, more comfort to the street, an extension, but yet a window to the city as we know it here on the library, and a very iconic for us, old but iconic building, the Pencil, as we call it. So, and celebrating art as well in this way. So making it more comfortable, making it extended, and making more places accessible. And a valley where we just were with the whole office on the stairs. 3 towers for high-end residential apartments. But in the plinth, there's a mixed-use, a mixed program, commercial, but also offices, and also the museum satellite. And as you can see here, we wanted to create this commercial project, really to have more and more green from the bottom to the top. So not just around the place and making it a little public square, but really that it's green all over and publicly accessible, as you can see on the right. So bringing people into projects makes it so the city is not just 2-dimensional, but also becomes more 3-dimensional, and being more invitive, and it can inspire, hopefully, people to indeed make use, and not just from the outside, but also from the inside. That connection between the lobby and the towers, and creating more views from there. And the green, as I said, of course, this is just planted, so it's going to be more and more luscious over the years. That's the intention. On the other side of the world, I saw some people from India, Pune. We have a very big project. It was in 18, and if you see on the side, you have the more standard projects for that region, where outdoor space or common space or publicly accessible space is just hardly there. And that is the debate that or the discussion that we started off with the client from the start. Like, how can we make these huge developments, 3,000 apartments, and that was just phase 1. How can we make that more livable a little bit more green, but especially more comfortable, and add so many different amenities and common spaces for people who actually live there. Then also we of course hope get to meet each other in an informal way. On a higher level, on the lower level, a bit like the Sail Garden, Sky Garden, where a vacant highway, this time for cars, not for trains, was turned into a garden, but most of all a pedestrian access from one side to the city to the other, where before that was completely impossible. And of course to create a bit of an oasis, really right inside of this hyperdense city, and connecting to the city where you already have a lot of different types of program. How can you combine all this and connect it in a very simple way with an object that was already there? You just have to punch down here and there to make the connection to ground level. As you can see here, you can walk in between the botanical garden on top and almost disappear if you want. And of course, make it fun. Have some pleasure and for all generations. And that's also done here in the Tainan Spring. A different city, but similar climate, similar density. And what we did here is just sort of carve out a little piece of a city to actually bring it back and give it back to the people. And here, especially with water, of course, trying to get some comfort during the sunny days. So on the left-hand side, it's opening up a plot which was taken before, and giving back green and leisure and fresh air, basically. So here you can see the block that was there before, and starting to carve, we actually left some of the remains, and we carved deeper into the parking garage, so you actually have you really disappear, let's say, from the cityscape, and have your own atmosphere right in between. So giving that back to the citizens, that was the whole idea here. So connected to that again is, of course, how can we also make use of our resources and our space, first of all, for this future-proof environment? How can we make smart use of the planet that we have? And of course, one of the first projects, well, not the first, but the first international project is the Expo 2000 in Hanover. Actually, today we're doing a makeover of this project. It was all demountable because that was, of course, very sustainable, but it's still there, and we're now giving it a new purpose. So yeah, how sustainable can you be? I think that is the first thing as architects that we should have a look at. How can you use what is already there and reuse it? But of course, this was a symbol. I'm looking at the emoji, sorry. Somebody getting scared. So this was really a symbol of how the Dutch, I would say, treat their land. And it's all to be used and used again, and to be formed in the way that we want it to be. And of course, we're very low under sea level. So how can you make and create your own country? And this is stacking all these different landscapes that we have on top of each other to make the smartest use of the plot in this sense, and try to be sustainable. So why not indeed have a forest on the fourth floor? Why not have a building without a facade? And how can we have a building just be generating its own power, which is very common today, but still a question mark back then. So here you can see a sketch of that. We wanted, of course, to even go higher, but there were limitations there. And having the forest, it's no longer there. That's a pity. But we have the picture, we have the remembrance. But completely different scope. For Bulgari, we made a facade only a year ago in Shanghai, where we actually reused the bottles that they produce in the first place, and still in line with their retail and commercial way of thinking, of course, making it beautiful and trying to attract attention in the busy retail streets of Shanghai, but still being very sustainable, having a different type of message from there on. Again, a total switch in type of projects. This is in the Netherlands, actually a new, it's a landfill from a long time ago already, but we call this free land. Here this is an urban design without a design. So basically it's giving some rules to people who would like to live in a free way and make up their own rules. And but therefore they have to collaborate, and that's what this project really is about. How to collaborate on this field of agriculture, which is of course less and less really in production mode. So how to make a collective with people and determine what you need, and then collectively make sure that your roads and your energy and your water filtration, etc., and water use is organized. So nothing is there, but you have to do it with the collective, and that creates these kind of spaces. People start to buy plots and start to develop them, and then they get closer and closer, and they have to collaborate more and more. And you see beautiful developments bottom up, starting up here. People can just build their own house in whatever style they want. So it's indeed, in that sense, it's their free land. And again, a very different type, but I just wanted to show also the wide diversity, I think, of how you can approach this, let's say, sustainable subject. Now, this is in Porto. We have just been starting to work on this large area, which was the oil refinery. It's been vacant for about a year, I think, now, and I cannot really show you more because we have just started. But it's it looks like this, and but nothing is happening now. So how can you? But it's very close to the city, which is about to explode and needs to expand. So how can we make use of these kind of areas and turn them into a residential area, a leisure area, mixed use neighborhood, so close to the city? And you can see here the fine borderline between heavy industry and the coastline, which of course is a huge benefit for new development. And here just a brief catalog of all the potentials that you can have using what is there and adding what you need for future development and making it green. And that is actually what we try to do here, not just master plan everything with roads and infrastructure, but really with adding green and nature and letting it go its way. Here you already see a little bit of that, so it's definitely possible. So that's for the next lecture, to show more. Again, installations for us very important, not just to build, but also to show people what you can actually do in a very with small means, and temporary installations like this one. Only a couple months ago, we had a festival to celebrate our roofs in the city, and here indeed to be able to walk up a roof and show that to people that you donate, that it's not just for pebbles, but really you can do so much and you can have such a beautiful view from up there. This is next to the depot, but we had another one which showed the more inner city side. People relaxing there, so they feel comfortable. That's a good side. So the last question I had was, and that we work with as an office, is how art, but of course mostly architecture, can actually be a tool for inclusivity. And so no matter what location or skill or budget, how can we make use of this as architects to make sure that everybody's welcomed? An older project in Matsudai, Japan in 2004. It was a very simple project that was a community center and also a center for the arts. And because it snows a lot of months throughout the year, we said, why don't we just raise this very small center and make sure that you create this space underneath? So it's not just used inside, but also be used outside. And so these kind of questions, opening it up, making or getting rid of the threshold in that sense. And here you can see that also the interior was really a collaboration of artists and designers and architects. And in a different way, Concordia project in Wrocław, Poland, just delivered 2 years ago, we tried to open up this basically commercial project for co-working space, to try and open up. On the left-hand side, you see opening up to the park as it is there, and on the top, during discussions with the city and with a lot of people who actually make use, as you can see them on the grass field right in front, make use of this island, and adding therefore an open roof garden to make it more fit into its surroundings. Here you can see it sit on the island and how the top roof is used in different ways, and that the people actually still, well, they use it as scenery. And there you see the mural on the inside. You can see it here as well, which relates to the history of this island and really connects, I would say, for the people and be opening up to the public. Also here in Mumbai, the Green Mile, very simple means open public space, never used or in a bit of a shady way, and now just with some graphics, with some planting, with some very simple means of furniture, etc., and some light, you really open it up and you make place for people where they can gather. So let me then quickly go to the depot, what this whole thing was about. Indeed, public space and art can play a connecting role to create these places for all. And so the Boijmans Van Beuningen Depot, the museum is right on the left-hand side here, and the depot is very close, because before they used to be really outside of the city, dispersed over like 8 or 9 different depots like this, storages, which nobody knew where they were, which was the whole intention. But of course, also nobody knew what the collection was about. You couldn't see it. You couldn't reach it, you couldn't get there. Even curators wouldn't really know what beautiful collection they would have. And of course, in the meantime, they did open up their archive in a digital manner. But now they wanted to open it up also in a physical manner. And how to do that right in the city center. As you can see here, the little tower is the museum. It's in a museum park. So it was quite a debate from start, like how to make use, how to not ruin, let's say, the public space and still give it a huge volume added, and how to work together with all the institutes around, and how to not create a background. So how do we go about this? Was the plot with the different institutes around. And it was big. It was a large volume. So we made it round to make it less oppressive, less defensive, but also not creating a background or a back side, and to squeeze the bottom so we leave as much open space as possible, and to have a big panoramic roof top where everybody could enter with an express elevator. And as I said, to leave as much of the public space open and the vistas there. The mirroring facade makes you feel like the park is actually twice as large. And also putting the trees that were there before really on the roof, adding a little public space, but then on a different level, the 3D city, as I mentioned before, making it almost fade away into the clouds and making an inversion during the night. And so it goes from here to here to here. You can all of a sudden see that it's indeed inhabited, that there's people there and not just storage. You can see the atrium here, so it's a big, indeed, pot, as we call it from the start, and we made a slit in between so people could easily go from the bottom all the way to the top, and around, with making these circles over the stairs, see all the art depots along the way. And here you can see, well, it's a panoramic photo where you can see all this coming together and creating a bit of a chaos almost, but indeed to invite you to explore yourself, to see what's there. So that is indeed the experience that we wanted to add, from minor public space before to 95% of the building being publicly accessible on all different levels. Just going through the floor plans a bit quickly. Ground floor was the biggest hurdle because everything comes in here. The truck, the people, the art, the container spaces, and the lobby, of course. And this is what it looks like today. It's your background, exactly. So Paul is at the right spot. Being invitive, but still at the same time, it's not a museum. This is the back of house of the museum. This is the other side, showing different types of exhibitions also. And with collaborations with different artists and designers, like here for the entrance, they didn't want to touch the building, just leaving the skin as pure as we made it. And here you can see the previous renders going through, opening up the depots, looking through the glass, but also being able to enter the depots. And looking from up close, of course, that is the real brilliancy of this, showing the backside, the back of house, how to restore and how to maintain. Showing a little bit of how they restore to celebrate that part as well. It's just as important as hanging pieces in the museum. Opening up to the city where we can, and also making super large spaces, the spaces that they did not have in the museum, to make these crazy big installations. And showing art from all sides, not just from the front in a wide space, but really from the back, from the front, and you can look from the top and the bottom. And then on the 6th floor we have the restaurant, even in the ceiling, reflecting the additional raised park on the roof. And this is indeed what it looks like today, although this is just before opening, of course. Adding trees which were prepared already long before to have flat roots, creating a little bit of an oasis. And again, just like in Seoul, you can disappear in the green. This was with the opening. The object or the architecture was almost an object of art itself. Quite scary to see these people dancing on your facade, but it didn't harm. And these kind of pictures, I think, are very important to show not just the podium, but really that people are starting to inhabit and embrace the building as part of the city, and seeing it as a scenery, let's say, new scenery for the city. And pieces of art like here, Bibliotheek really made it complete as a piece of art, and also to show that public space is part of that. And that is what I wanted to share. So thank you for that. I saw a lot of emojis coming by. It's a new dynamics of of a lecture. That's very nice. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a nice way for people to give a little bit of reaction. There's a lot of them coming in right now. Thank you so much, Fokke. That was absolutely incredible whirlwind tour. And a lot of those projects were familiar, but so many were new to me as well. So I really appreciate you showing everything, as well as the art depot, everything else as well. And we have a lot of questions coming in. If anybody else has a question, definitely add it in the questions tab. Just before I jump to questions, I just want to highlight we have a poll. If you click in the bottom right corner on the polls tab, if you're interested in potentially following in the footsteps of Fokke and MVRDV and potentially winning an award and maybe joining us on the stage next year, then definitely let us know. You can request a submission guide for the upcoming program, or you can ask to be registered for submission tips and deadline reminders as well for the next A+ awards. So now I'm going to go to questions, and it's going to be hard for me to choose because there are so many good ones. So I'll start at the beginning. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing this right. Aniruddha asks, in the mixed use projects, are the different programs and their size and location and so on suggested or proposed by the architects or by someone else? I think this was in reference to the earlier project, which was mixed use with high-end residential above, very recently complete. I guess the question is, do you need to convince developers to add civic public spaces in as well as the more sort of profitable typologies, I guess.
Yeah. Well, if the client doesn't do so, then we will. So that is a bit so normally, of course, you get a brief and a budget and a planning, etc. But we try to always read in between the lines and to see, what is missing or what is redundant, or where can we add, let's say, a bit more of unpredictable, and but especially more public. So there were some, like I showed Concordia, which is in Poland, the one with the rooftop. As I said, the rooftop was not in the program, and actually the client didn't. Yeah, it didn't come up to them because it is actually, in fact, a commercial program. It's rentable space. It has it has public or an exhibition area. It has restaurants, but still the building itself is meant for commercial use. But throughout the discussions with the city, and they were very much against, because this building was vacant for a long time. And so throughout the discussions with the city and the people making use of this island, we actually proposed, like, why not make the roof semi-publicly accessible, so you can actually have the view, you can give it back. And so in the end, that was indeed realized, and therefore really embraced by the people there. So it was a mind changer. And in other projects, it was already with the client. They wanted to have this mix for the valley. Maybe that was the project that was referred to. It needed to be a mix of program, but to make it actually publicly accessible, going and the green all over, that really comes from our end to because this is a neighborhood just outside of Amsterdam, where it's like the financial district. There's nothing there. There's some football, some soccer fields, etc., but there's hardly any residential. It's really starting to become more of a neighborhood, but it doesn't really have all these kind of amenities and public spaces. So therefore, that was indeed our addition, I would say, to make sure that it's indeed, as a building, as a complex, a neighborhood in itself. So sometimes it's a debate, sometimes it's just a nice discussion, and sometimes it's already in a brief.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's sort of a value that a lot of people don't realize that architects can bring, is kind of ideas to extend or add to a brief. And you don't always have to do it exactly as the client says, but you can also suggest new ideas that maybe they hadn't thought of before, and then come up with the design solution around it. We've had other talks actually this week that have been quite similar in terms of extending that brief in a creative way to add public space. So I think that's a really great point to highlight. I'm going to ask it's a more practical, material-based question now, and it's a little controversial because we've had a lot of debates around mirrored glass facades on our site. So Pardis asks, is the mirrored facade sustainable for birds? A lot of birds have been crashing into buildings. He says 750 million birds a year, but I don't know if that's accurate. But that's one number. And yeah, do you look into bird safe glass, and is this something that like, is this a conversation or a debate that you've had in your office?
Yeah, for sure. No, this has been a long and not just a debate. It's been a research from different sides, and we've tried many different things. For instance, there's indeed sort of what is called bird safety glass, as you also just mentioned, but it doesn't actually. The results are not that good, and it's really expensive. At the same time, it's we could also imagine, like you have in airports, to have I don't know what you like a big bird, like I don't know what you would call them, but to come over like once a month or so, that could happen. We didn't go for that either. In the end, what reports showed us, not from this building but in general, is that actually the fact that it's really mirroring, so it's not just reflective, but it's really mirroring, makes the birds actually fly away because they really see another bird coming towards them. So they fly away. So that was for us very comforting to make, and of course we monitored afterwards. And actually, right on the other end of the museum park, there you have the Kunsthalle Wome, but also the Museum of Natural History, and there you have. The director there is keeping a small collection, or actually is getting bigger and bigger, of dead animals in the city. And up to now, he has one dead bird of the depot. So that comforts us that it's indeed, we looked into it. Yes, it's not an easy topic. But in the end, we see that there's actually not, that it's not really happening. So I think it's really more reflective buildings rather than mirroring buildings. But so these numbers I could not represent.
Thanks. Yeah, I've read so many articles about this with conflicting information, and there's a great article been posted by Pardis in the chat if anyone wants to read more about that. And I followed up with another one from Architizer, which is about different solutions for bird safe design. But I think your point about the mirroring is really interesting. And perhaps plain glass is actually more problematic than mirrored glass in that sense. But yeah, I think that's a conversation that will continue on our platform. Thank you for that question, Alice. I'm going to ask, I guess this is kind of similar to the first question, but what arguments can you make for extending social or public programs in your projects? I imagine it's not the easiest task to convince an investor for additions on such a large scale. So yeah, I guess it's another question about how much can an architect be an advocate in this sense?
Well, we try to do as much as we can, but per project and per client. That of course makes a huge difference. What kind of project? If it really is just a residential development, for instance, or office space, then you can look in different fields. Right? So it's not going to be really publicly accessible, most likely. Although for like the silos in Amsterdam, a very old building that we did. Has a lot of neighborhoods, for instance, within, so it's all social housing, or most of it is social housing. But so the prices are quite low. The budget was low, was a challenge, let's say. This is really 25 years ago, I think. But still, to add public or common space makes the building and the project really rich. So it's on different levels. I mean, you can do it within the building for these people, for instance, or for the also DNB Nor in Oslo, a large bank. You know, this is normally ideally as a typology, a building that is very closed and very introverted, the headquarters of a bank of a country. Of course, they don't want to show anything, especially the dealing room. That is normally sort of enclosed, nobody can see it. But there we introduced also a walkway over the building and partly through. And a lot of people, and it's 7 or 8 floors tall, so, but a lot of people actually who work there actually use it, so they can look into these normally completely enclosed environments. So even for people who work there, so it's not for all public, but even for people who work there, it can really be an added value. So it just depends with who your client is and what his agenda, her agenda is, of course.
Yeah, that's great. I imagine if a client selects MVRDV as well, they hopefully have some knowledge of what you've done before. So hopefully that that helps them come in with an open mind and kind of helps the conversation, knowing how creative the architects are from your firm. And Camilla asked an interesting question about your kind of your more temporary projects, your kind of installation style projects. She's interested to know how you manage the process of recycling elements and giving them a new life in cases of ephemeral architecture. So I guess like the amazing pink roof, for example, what happens to those materials? Where do they come from and where do they go, I guess, afterwards?
Nice question. Yeah. Well, the whole structure, the same for the pink roof as I showed you, but also there was an orange one at the same time going into the city center. And a couple of years ago, we had the big stair right next to the main train station going up to one of the monumental buildings right there. These installations are built up out of scaffolding, so it's just rented. It's rented material, and that's like 90% of all the material that we use. So it's going to be reused and reused. The cladding on top, I have to think, because there is indeed there's wood and there's like a type of carpet. And the carpet is being reused, I'm quite sure, but I couldn't really give you the exact details. But these are things that we do look at. Also for exhibitions, for instance, we had an exhibition right in the new institute next to the depot, as you can see it in this image. That's where the pink roof was on top. And we also, we used wood that they had in their workshops. We used the furniture that they had in their office space. So we're very, and of course there's always new material that you need to buy, and that cannot really be reused, or it's not really clear at that point what it's going to be used for afterwards. But it's definitely a topic that is, it's a hot topic for us to be thinking about these kind of afterlives, let's say. It's definitely on our agenda. And we try to do as much as we can there. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the use of scaffolding for architecture, because it's so associated with just maintenance of buildings, and doing something so creative with it, I think is really exciting. And when you start thinking about it like building blocks, I mean, like I imagine that it's kind of endless possibilities with those components.
Sure.
A couple of questions that kind of speak to the rooftop greenery on a couple of your projects. Sue is interested to know like how the structural system does the structural system of the roof need to be substantially strengthened for the weight of these kind of rooftop gardens, and do you have to think about unusual strategies for waterproofing, this kind of thing? And also, I'll ask the other question. So Peter asked, how to ensure that the gardens don't die because of the lack of root space. I heard you say something about flat roots, which was really interesting. So I wonder if you can just speak a little bit about your firm's strategies around these rooftop trees and greenery.
Yeah, sure. Now, about the weight, very often, for instance, we also, if it's in transformations or then you can find the points where you can actually have more load. Yeah, so right on top of a column, you can most of the time easily add more weight right there. So you have to be careful of where you position your greenery. But in case of the depot, of course, yeah, it's new build. So and of course it does have some impact on the structure. But basically, you already have to deal with the water that it can capture. So the impact is not that big. It's not that you have to increase your structure with a large percentage. That's quite minor, I would say. But what we did there is, first of all, why, one of the reasons, I didn't show it here, but one of the reasons why the museum wanted to collect all their parts of the collection in one building was not only to move it into the center and close to the museum, but also to keep it safe. So what you see here is a fridge and a safe at the same time. And of course, one thing they didn't want to have is water. So so there's no sprinkler system at all. So all the water that you catch on the roof needed to be directed to the shafts and go through the shafts and not to any other space. Which also means that we actually made, you could say, a computer floor, a raised floor above the structural floor. So basically you just make a regular roof on top of your structure. You just make a watertight roof, and maybe normally that's where you stop or you put your pebbles. But then here indeed you have a raised floor where there's installations as well if they need to be dispersed over the space. You have and there is where we have like 80 centimeters of space for these roots. And indeed the bigger trees, and they've been there for 2 years now, and they do really great. And it's been super hot this summer. There's been storms one after the other, so they're coping, they're surviving really well, and the green is really blossoming. So I'm happy to see that there's actually sort of communities of birds up on the roof. So it's quite nice to see. But it's so they have been prepared or chosen these trees 2 years before they would be placed on top of the roof to indeed squeeze the roots in that sense, and make sure that they would be growing in horizontally instead of going deep. And of course there's an irrigation system on top of the roof that makes it maintenance low. And they're being monitored by an expert on that sense. Of course, we get a lot of inputs from people who are indeed consultants on this topic. So they choose the type of tree together with us. Not every type of tree can survive with the wind, etc., on such high levels. So there's a whole team around this, and especially for the depot, we see that it survives really well. So I think the sandwich of flooring, etc., is one thing, but the result at the end is definitely worth it.
Fantastic. Yeah. This is a kind of another question that sort of links to that. And Bayo is asking about the coastal refinery project, which I think is in its early stages still. But and you mentioned greening up the site, and Bayo wondered is there a program for the conversion and the repurposing of the existing industrial fabric, or is the site allowed to evolve organically over time? And I guess the question is, how much do you, and speaking about your collaboration and consultation, how much do you work with landscape architects and maybe also environmental consultants about removing harmful substances from a site like that? And I'm interested to know, like, how complicated is that process and how long does it take? Because I can imagine if you're turning a huge industrial site into residential area, that is probably one of the most important starting points for the project.
Yeah, no, very true. And of course, it's a huge team. And indeed, this how long that's going to take, I cannot tell you, because we just started. And we did more transformations of, let's say, former industrial or harbor areas, but then but this might be more polluted indeed. So that is a part that I think they're at this point. I'm not deeply involved in this project, but I am following it because it's indeed, I think it's a very intriguing one to see how that can be realized. To live in that neighborhood, and how much of nature would be there, and how much control that would be. That is sort of the slider that we're looking at. Like now it's all tarmac. How can you put that further to indeed nature? And of course we're going to make sure we're going to draw a line, like where is it going to be green and where do we need developments, because the brief is indeed it's a neighborhood basically, so it's residential, there's and everything that a neighborhood needs, so it's mixed in that sense, and but there's still a lot of additional space that we can indeed sort of give back to nature. By simply taking away the tarmac. I mean, that is what's covering the whole area. So identifying the remarkable spots and the reusable spots and buildings and structures in the area, that's one of the first things that we're now working on. And then adding, of course, new programs, the little catalog as that I showed. But nature always being a big part or equal part of that program, and trying to always combine the two. And yeah, you need a lot of specialists for that. I mean, the ground that I couldn't really speak to specifically for this project, but I'm sure there's a large team who's right on top of getting to the pollution out before people start to move in. I'm sure that's going to take a bit of time, but it's fine. It's a master planning project, and that always needs more time. Also to define the brief, exactly what type of housing, what type of amenities, what type of public space that needs to be developed over time.
Fantastic. I just commend you and your team for being ambitious and not being scared off by such a complicated task on such a huge scale. I think that it's a great example to set for other developers and other architects. The more it's done, we're speaking to James Cornerfield operations on Friday, and it just made me think of the High Line. I think a lot of people would have thought that something like that, they wouldn't want to touch it. Too many difficult challenges, but once it was done, everyone kind of thought, oh, maybe this is a great case study. And I think a lot of your projects are likely to do the same thing, especially this refinery project. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how it unfolds over time, and I'm sure we'll cover it. We'll tell the story, however long it takes. We'll tell the story. I think we're just about out of time. Thank you so much for all of your questions and for your conversations in the chat as well. Thank you so much, Fokke, for sharing so many amazing projects. I'm sure that we'll do another talk sometime soon. And yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. Tomorrow we have Shajay Bhushan from Zaha Hadid Architects, so that's going to be really exciting. Please do join us for that. If you're interested in following in the footsteps of our speakers, please do let us know in the poll, and you can request a submission guide there. I'll leave that open. But yeah, until next time, thank you so much, and thank you to MVRDV for everything you do.
We'll keep on doing it. Thank you. No, it's really nice to see, and that it's more interactive. So thank you for the invitation, and have a lot of fun, of course, with the next speakers. Indeed, High Line is really been a very good example. It's beautiful. So enjoy next lecture, and thanks for all the comments and the smileys and the emojis and the questions. It was very nice.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Speak soon.
Okay,
bye.
Bye-bye.